Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. So in this one here, I want to talk about Judith and Daryl and why I do believe that Judith needs to tell Daryl about what happened to Rick and where Michonne really is. There's a good opportunity for this moment to happen in episode 15, which is this Sunday's episode, and there's also, if it doesn't happen then, it can happen in 16, right? But I want to talk about why I think this moment does need to happen. If it doesn't happen this season, it's not the end of the world, but it needs to happen very early on in season 11. And I'm going to get my thoughts as to why I think that, and also, I guess, go down the path of what if Judith just never tells Daryl? What could that mean? So yeah, I want to get into all of that. Before we jump into this, I do have to warn you for spoilers, obviously, for The Walking Dead season 10. Secondly, I don't know if you guys checked this out, but they actually released this, I think, a couple days ago, 2 days ago, I think. They released the full version of Beta's song, like Half Moon live in concert or whatever. I'll leave a link to it down below if you haven't checked it out yet, but it's pretty cool hearing the whole version. Like this right here, this is Beta before the apocalypse. He was a country star, and it makes you think. I wonder how many of our characters maybe heard this song. I'm sure Rick heard this song, right? Like that's the kind of music that Rick's into. So was Rick a big fan of Beta before the apocalypse? Like, how messed up that would be? Anyways, I'll leave a link down below if you want to go check that out, but let's talk about Judith and Daryl and this whole thing right now. I think one of the big questions going into episode 15 is going to be, is Judith going to tell Daryl about what happened to Rick? And you see some shots of them alone together, so I feel like it has to happen. Like, Judith should say something to Daryl here. And I just feel like it needs to, it has to, right? For this to go completely, for her to not mention anything about what happened to Michonne here it would be so off. They're alone together here, she has to say something. There's no way they're just going to be hanging out here or killing walkers or traveling, like whatever they're doing here, and there's no mention of her mom at all and what happened, right? I think that's why they're alone here. I think that that moment is going to happen. And so I want to give my thoughts as to why I think this moment has to happen. And I think what it really comes down to is the fact that Judith is a kid. I think it's really as simple as that. Judith is a kid. She doesn't really know. Kids don't really know better for the most part, right? To keep that type of information or to withhold that information, maybe because you don't want to give Daryl hope or something like that, right? You don't want to give hope to other people because, Rick, like, yeah, he survived that bridge explosion, but maybe he died a year or two later, right? Like, we don't know until we actually find him. Now, the issue with this is that if Judith always keeps this a secret, then when is Daryl going to find out? That's the thing. If, say, Daryl finds out at the end of the series, because the way they reveal this is Daryl and them are outside Alexandria, something like that. Rick shows up with Michonne and he's just shocked. Like, what? Like, Rick's back? Rick came home? It's always going to be so weird because Judith will be like, yeah, I already knew the whole entire time. It's like, I don't know if you can do that, really. I really don't know if you can do that. I think this reveal needs to happen at some point, and I do think it's possible that the reveal isn't going to happen this season. Mostly because the way I'm kind of viewing it is, if you're writing the season, like, the thing is, you want to keep certain moments of interest on the show, going for as long as you can. And I think the whole reveal of our characters finding out that Rick's alive is such a huge point of interest where a lot of us just want that moment to happen, right? And so if you can extend it as long as you can, it'll just keep us watching, sort of thing, right? So I do get that. I get that as a writer. You want to kind of craft the story where it's really interesting and fun and you have all these things, and, I totally get that. So I can see if you were writing this season, you're writing episode 13 as Michonne's final episode, and then 14 certain things happen, and then I can see how maybe you don't want that reveal to happen in 15 because so much is happening. Maybe you want to extend that moment until season 11, right? Like in season 10, Michonne found out, so in season 11, Daryl will find out, sort of thing, right? I can see how that could happen. I definitely could see that. You don't want to give too much away in season 10, sort of thing, right? And so I get all of that, but the thing is, having Judith find out about it, that's where it's just very unrealistic. For me personally anyways, I think a lot of people could feel differently from me, but for me personally, I just find it very hard to believe that Judith wouldn't tell anyone about it, right? Like, I feel like Judith would definitely say something because you're a kid. I remember where it was, I don't know how old Judith is, like 10, right? There is no way I would have kept a secret like that when I was 10 years old. There's just no way in hell. Even when I was like 14 or 15, maybe like 15, you start to think a little bit more, you start to get a little smarter. But even then, with something so big like that, like, the man, like my father, the man we thought died 6-7 years ago, he's actually alive out there. And, my mom is now leaving, and you may notice that you're not going to see her for months, maybe a couple years, to not explain why. And that's just I don't know. I think that's why she has to. I think that's just the whole thing about it, is that it's going to make a lot of fans, I think, frustrated with the character, because, I think kids on this show, first of all, have a really hard time because, it's just that they make stupid decisions, but they're kids. I can forgive them for that, but some people just get really annoyed with it, which is fine. It's everyone's opinion. But I think with something like this, I think mostly everyone will be so annoyed with it because this character is withholding very valuable information. We all want Daryl to find out about what happened to Rick, right? And Judith could just say, oh, he did survive. Michonne went to go find him because he left clues in this boat, or I guess she doesn't know everything exactly, but just saying that, getting his reaction to that would be so exciting. And Judith withholding that every time you see those two characters together now. It's always going to be the question of, well, is Judith going to tell Daryl now? Is she going to tell him now? And I'm not even kidding you. It's going to be a thing for a very long time. For all of season 11, if it doesn't happen this season, we're all going to be talking about that one thing. Is Judith going to tell Daryl? Is Judith going to tell this person? Why isn't she saying anything? And this makes no sense at all. And so that's why overall I think she has to say something, because I just think if she doesn't, there's just going to be a lot of frustration. You know what I mean? Like I can see maybe not telling certain people, like maybe Carol, Negan, whatever, but I feel like someone with Daryl, someone who really is going to be watching over her, I feel like you should at least tell him. But even then, I think you need to tell everyone, because if you just tell Daryl, like Carol's going to be wondering about what happened to Michonne. Everyone else will be wondering what happened to her. So I think like they need to know. I think there's a time limit or whatever on how long Judith can like keep this information to herself. There's no way she can just not tell anyone, because eventually at certain times people are going to be worried as hell, right? They're going to be concerned, like Michonne hasn't been back in a year. Judith isn't going to be too worried and be like, well, I know she's strong, I know she'll come back, sort of thing. They'll think it's weird, and I don't know. I think you create a lot of problems with this, and that's my thing about it all. I think if like what happens if she doesn't, well, I just think it causes a lot of frustration, I think, with like among the fan base, a lot of frustrations with Judith. And it's just, I don't think it needs to be there. This is such a small thing. I think the reveal of Rick's survival to everyone could actually really help the show in so many ways. Like, I know that's like such a huge thing of interest, that if you can kind of extend that for as long as you can and have the reveal in season 11, say at the end of season 11, everyone finds out about Rick's survival. Then you have a huge moment like that happening in season 11 or something, and then maybe in season 12 something else happens, sort of thing. But I just think if our characters find out that Rick's alive, it's not going to feel so sad. I would say right now in the show, it doesn't feel sad or anything. Like, it's definitely, it's not the vibe I'm getting right now anyways, but there is something to whenever Daryl, Judith, and I guess when Michonne was on the show, whenever they're together, it's never happy. It's always like they're mourning. It constantly feels like that. And it's because I think a lot of us, we know that Rick's gone. Well, we know he's alive, but they obviously think that he's gone. And it's just such a sad thing to watch. Like, whenever I see Daryl and Judith together, I just think of how much they lost, and it's never anything else. Like, when I saw Rick and Michonne and Judith when she was a lot younger, they were playing and stuff in season 9, I wasn't seeing, how it was so sad. I was like, wow, they actually built this life. Yeah, Carl died, Lori died, and all of that, but look at what they built here. They're so happy. Like, this is so amazing. Even if Daryl and Judith were playing together and stuff, there's going to be this hint of tragedy behind it. And it's because they think that Rick died, and, they can just find out that he's alive. I honestly, I just think it would change the vibe of the show. And maybe if we don't find out in season 10, that could be a really amazing, interesting storyline for season 11, which is Judith not being able to keep this a secret for that much longer. Because maybe that could be a storyline, right? Like, a lot of us are frustrated with why Judith won't say anything. Well, maybe there is a reason. Maybe she's too worried that if she says anything to Daryl or to Carol or anyone else, that they're also just going to leave her and go for Rick. Like, that could be a really interesting storyline, and I can see them doing that. And maybe they're having this memorial for Rick. Maybe they do it annually or something like that, and they're all remembering him. And Judith is just like, she has, she's conflicted because she knows that he might actually be alive. And then it leads to something where she just tells Daryl, or Carol or maybe Negan. Like maybe she opens up to Negan before Daryl. There's definitely a lot of drama you can create there, and I think a lot of, there's a lot of fun things you can do there. I just think in general, there's no way Judith can keep this secret until the reunion happens. There's just no way, because it's just gonna be so awkward. Like Daryl's gonna be like, "Whoa, Rick, you're alive," blah blah blah, and then Judith just knew this entire time, and he would just be like, "You didn't tell me." I think he would understand. He wouldn't get too mad at her, but it's just so awkward. It's kind of like the same thing as the Gabriel helicopter thing. Like, why didn't Gabriel say anything about the helicopter that was flying around and Jadis and all of that? Like, that whole thing is so weird. He didn't say anything at all. That really isn't as big as this, though. Like, that thing is really just something really minor. Like, yeah, maybe he didn't really think too much of it, right? He just saw a helicopter, it flew away. Maybe, I don't think he really knew it would lead to the CRM or something like that, right? So that's fine. Something like this, though, where it's so personal with Rick being alive, there's just no way you can really keep this a secret. And so, yeah, I guess I'll end it here, and I'll just say that I wouldn't be too surprised if they didn't say anything this season and Judith never told Daryl or anything like that, but it has to happen in season 11. I think if it keeps going on for until season 12 or 13, 14, it'll just feel so ridiculous, and I think it's something that will always be on the back of our minds when we're watching the show. Oh, Judith knows that Rick could be alive, and she's not telling Daryl, right? Whenever they have a scene together, whenever I'm doing videos, it's always going to be a thing that I talk about. Is Judith going to tell Daryl here? Will she finally tell him here? And I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing that you want us to be talking about for many years. And I don't even know what the hell I just said there, but like, you know what I mean? So obviously, as a huge Rick fan and Daryl fan and Judith fan stuff, I want this information to come out. I really do. And I hope it does come out. I really do. We'll see where this goes. Obviously, episode 15 is airing in 2 days. If you have AMC Premiere, you can watch it tonight. So I imagine we will find out tonight whether or not that does happen. Yeah, anyways, post all your thoughts down below. Let me know if you're hyped for episode 15. Do you think Judith should tell Daryl about Rick? And do you think she's going to this season? Or do you think she's going to next season? And also, how do you think it should be done? Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.